You ever notice how some moments feel different? Not louder, not brighter, just heavier, like the air itself knows something you don't. You're sitting there, minding your own business, thinking this is just another day, and then suddenly something inside you goes still. It's quiet, but not empty. Almost like something's watching, waiting for you to listen. That's not coincidence. That's timing. You think you found this message by accident, don't you? Scrolling through noise, looking for distraction, and somehow you ended up here. But what if this isn't random? What if this is the thing you were meant to hear, right before everything changes? Life has a strange way of sending warnings, or maybe invitations. It doesn't send them in bright lights or booming voices. It sends them through whispers. A title that catches your eye. A phrase that feels too personal to ignore. A chill that runs down your spine for no reason. That's how life works when it wants your attention. Quiet, but undeniable. Transformation begins the moment you finally listen. Not when you say you're ready. Not when you post about it. Not when you pretend you've changed. It starts when you, actually, stop fighting what's been trying to reach you all along. Because truth doesn't shout, it whispers. And most people are too busy talking, proving, performing, to ever hear it. You've been asking for change, crying for it, begging for a sign. But when the sign came, you called it coincidence. When the lesson appeared, you called it pain. When the truth spoke, you called it noise. You don't realize that everything you've been through wasn't punishment. It was preparation. You keep wondering why your life feels stuck. Like you're walking in circles, repeating the same mistakes with different faces, different jobs, different days. It's because you haven't listened yet. You've heard the message, but you haven't listened. There's a difference. Hearing is easy. Listening requires surrender. It means dropping your excuses, your pride, your comfort, and actually facing what's been right in front of you. But most people would rather suffer in familiar chaos than face the discomfort of real change. Because change demands honesty. And honesty, that's the part no one likes. You say you want transformation, but do you? Because transformation isn't magic. It's destruction disguised as renewal. It doesn't sprinkle light. It burns everything false to ash. It takes your comfort, your illusions, your fake smiles, and forces you to look in the mirror without filters. That's why so few people ever truly change. They want rebirth without death. They want growth without losing who they used to be. But the moment you finally listen, really listen, that version of you can't survive. It crumbles. It resists. It screams. Because it knows once truth enters, there's no going back. You've felt it before, haven't you? That one moment where something inside you went silent. The noise stopped. The distractions faded. And suddenly, you just knew. You couldn't explain it, couldn't prove it. But you knew something had to change. That's the moment transformation begins. It's not dramatic, not cinematic. It's quiet, almost unsettling. Because it doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. The voice you've ignored, the feeling you've buried, the intuition you've silenced. It finally demands to be heard. And when it speaks, everything in you trembles. You think you're waiting for a sign, but signs mean nothing if you won't act. You've been collecting wisdom like souvenirs, quoting motivational lines, pretending to evolve. But deep down, you're still afraid to move. You keep asking for clarity while clutching confusion because it's familiar. You say you want to change, but you're still holding hands with your old habits, your old fears, your old pain. You can't transform while still protecting the things that keep you broken. Transformation begins when you stop asking for comfort and start asking for truth. No matter how much it hurts, you've got to understand. Life won't force you to listen. It'll just keep repeating the same lessons until you do. The same heartbreaks, the same endings, the same emptiness dressed in new clothes. Every situation that breaks you isn't there to destroy you. It's there to reveal what you keep avoiding. The universe doesn't waste energy. It keeps sending you the same test until you learn. But once you finally listen, once you finally stop blaming, stop pretending, stop running, the cycle breaks. That's when transformation begins. Not with effort, with awareness. Listening doesn't mean agreeing with everything you hear. It means facing it, even if it shatters you. The truth about who you are, what you've done, what you've allowed. It's brutal at first. It feels like loss, like exposure, like standing naked in front of your own reflection. But it's freedom disguised as pain. Because once you hear it, really hear it, you can't go back to sleep. The lies don't fit anymore. The comfort doesn't soothe anymore. The excuses don't work anymore. That's when life shifts. Not because it got easier, but because you finally stopped lying to yourself. Most people want transformation to come gently. They want it to make sense, to follow a plan. But real change comes like a storm. It rips through everything false, leaves you standing in the ruins of what you thought you needed, and asks, now what? And that's the moment. The stillness after the destruction, where listening becomes understanding. You realize everything that fell apart wasn't taken from you, it was taken off you. You were being stripped of everything that couldn't come with you to the next version of yourself. And here's the strange part. Once you finally listen, once you stop resisting, everything you were chasing starts to chase you. Peace, purpose, direction. They find you. Because they were never gone. They were buried under the noise of your denial. That's the cruel beauty of transformation. It doesn't add more to your life. It takes away everything that isn't real. It empties you until only truth remains. That's what listening does. It breaks illusions and replaces them with awareness. You'll know when it happens. Not because the world around you changes, but because your perception does. The things that once scared you lose their power. The people who once controlled you lose their hold. You stop reacting to pain the same way. You stop chasing validation. You start seeing patterns where there used to be problems. That's the mark of someone who finally listened. Not someone who changed overnight, but someone who stopped pretending they didn't know better. Because deep down, you've always known. You just weren't ready to hear it. But once you do, once you really hear it, that's when transformation begins. The message you resist is usually the one meant for you. Funny, isn't it? How the truth always comes dressed as something uncomfortable. You'll feel it the moment it arrives. That sudden tension, that quiet defensiveness, that voice in your head saying, "This isn't for me." But that's how you know it is. The message that stings, that unsettles you, that you instantly want to escape from. That's the one meant to wake you up. The ones you like, the ones that make you feel safe, those don't change you. The ones that hit where it hurts, those are the ones that were sent to break something false inside you. You want to grow, but you want to stay comfortable. You want truth, but only if it agrees with you. You want lessons, but only if they don't come wrapped in loss. You say you're open to hearing what you need, but the moment someone or something mirrors your flaws back to you, you shut down. You defend, you justify, you pretend not to care. You call it judgment, hate, negativity, anything to avoid admitting it struck a nerve. But that nerve, that's the doorway. That's the place where transformation begins. The pain you feel when truth hits isn't punishment. It's exposure. It's life showing you what still needs healing. You've built walls around your ego, haven't you? Tall ones, disguised as confidence. You tell yourself you're fine, that you've moved on, that you don't care anymore. But then something comes along. A sentence, a sound, a moment, and suddenly you feel it. That sting in your chest, that irritation that comes from being seen. You want to push it away, block it out, scroll past it, because it's easier to stay blind than to face what's obvious. That's what resistance is. Your ego fighting for its life. Because if you really listened, if you let that message in, the person you've been pretending to be would have to die. You call it anger, but anger's just a mask for fear. You're not mad at the truth. You're afraid of it. Afraid of what it'll demand from you. Afraid of what you'll have to admit. Afraid that maybe you've been living a lie a little too long. That's why people reject the very thing they've been asking for. They say they want guidance. But when it arrives, they call it offensive. They say they want healing, but when it starts, they call it pain. That's the trick life plays. The answer comes disguised as discomfort. Only the ones willing to sit in that discomfort ever get to see the shift on the other side. You think the truth should feel good, but it rarely does. It's not there to flatter you. It's there to free you. And freedom never feels like comfort at first. It feels like exposure, like standing in a room where all the lights suddenly come on, and there's nowhere to hide. You see everything. The lies you've told, the excuses you've made, the patterns you've repeated. You see how much time you've wasted pretending you were okay. You see how you've been sabotaging yourself. That's why it hurts. Not because the truth is cruel, but because it's clear. You've spent your life resisting messages like that. The ones that challenge you, that force you to look deeper. You push them away, laugh them off, pretend they're not about you. But deep down, you feel it. You know when something's speaking directly to your soul. You can't explain it, but it sticks with you. You try to forget it, but it echoes. That's not coincidence. That's conviction. That's life saying, hey, I'm talking to you. But the longer you ignore it, the louder it gets. Until one day, it's not a whisper anymore. It's a collapse. Resistance is expensive. It costs you time, peace, purpose. It keeps you trapped in loops you could have escaped long ago. Every time you resist a message meant for you, you sign up to repeat the same lesson in a harder form. Life doesn't punish you. It just escalates until you finally listen. First it sends discomfort. Then it sends disruption. Then it sends disaster. All because you refused to hear the whisper when it was gentle. You call it bad luck, but it's not. It's delayed awareness. The longer you resist, the heavier the awakening becomes. You see, truth doesn't need your permission to exist. It doesn't shrink just because you ignore it. It waits, patiently, watching as you run in circles, convincing yourself you're fine. And when you've had enough, when the pretending starts to exhaust you, that same message will return. It'll find another way in, through a person, through pain, through silence. Because when something's meant for your growth, it doesn't stop knocking. It keeps finding you until you stop running. You'll know the message is for you when you feel that strange pull. The mix of fear and recognition. It's not random. It's not coincidence. It's the universe holding up a mirror, showing you exactly what you've been avoiding. You can resist it, sure. You can drown it out with distractions. But sooner or later, that mirror will crack everything false you've built around yourself. Because truth doesn't chase, it exposes. And once it does, the pretending ends. The message you resist is the medicine you need. You don't have to like it. You just have to face it. Because behind every trigger lies a truth you're not ready to accept yet. That's the point. Growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from collision. From the moment the lie you've been living meets the truth you can't avoid. That's when something shifts. That's when life changes direction. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped running from the one message that was meant for you all along. Nothing changes until awareness becomes unbearable. People love the idea of change, but not the weight that comes with it. They say they want better. They pray for signs. They talk about transformation. But the truth is, they want it to come quietly, without confrontation. They want to evolve without being exposed. They want to grow without outgrowing. But real change doesn't knock politely. It barges in, flips the lights on, and makes you look at everything you've tried to ignore. Awareness isn't a gift. It's a mirror you didn't ask for. You stare into it long enough, and you'll see the mess you've been sweeping under the rug. Awareness ruins ignorance, and ignorance, as they say, is bliss. Until the illusion cracks. You can play dumb for a while, convince yourself that everything's fine. Pretend the cracks in your life are just bad timing or bad luck. But awareness has a way of creeping in, doesn't it? A small thought, a quiet observation, a moment that feels too real to ignore. Suddenly, the excuses don't work anymore. The people you used to tolerate start to drain you. The routines you called normal start to feel like cages. That's when you start to realize the problem isn't the world, it's your denial of it. When awareness comes, it doesn't ask for permission. It shows you the truth raw, unfiltered, and often ugly. You'll notice patterns you kept repeating, relationships you kept reviving, mistakes you kept calling chances. You'll see how you kept returning to the same pain and expecting different results. That's what makes awareness unbearable. Not the truth itself, but the realization that you knew it all along. You just didn't want to admit it. It's easier to blame others than to face the fact that you stayed somewhere you outgrew, because comfort felt safer than change. People say awakening feels freeing, but they don't tell you about the H that comes before it. The ache of seeing your own reflection clearly for the first time. The ache of knowing you can't go back to sleep once you've seen what's real. That's why so many people resist awareness. Not because they don't see it, but because they do, and it terrifies them. Awareness strips away the noise, the distractions, the illusions that kept you comfortable. It leaves you alone with yourself, and that silence. That's what most people can't handle. You can run from many things in life, but you can't run from what you know. Once you're aware, pretending becomes poison. The job you hate starts to suffocate you. The fake smiles feel heavier. The people who drain you become unbearable to be around. You start feeling everything more deeply. The lies, the hypocrisy, the emptiness. It's like waking up in a burning room you used to call home. You can't unsee it. You can't unknow it. And that's where change begins. Not when things get easy, but when staying the same starts to hurt more than transformation ever could. You'll notice awareness shows up disguised as frustration. You get tired, not physically, but mentally. Tired of the same conversations, the same disappointments, the same cycles that always lead to nowhere. That's not coincidence. That's awareness trying to break through. Life doesn't repeat itself to punish you. It repeats itself to get your attention. Until you see the pattern, you're trapped inside it. The moment you finally recognize it, the walls start to crumble. But it hurts, doesn't it? Because realizing you've been part of your own problem feels heavier than blaming anyone else. People chase enlightenment like it's some soft, glowing light. But awareness is harsh. It doesn't hug you, it exposes you. It doesn't whisper affirmations. It whispers the truth you've been avoiding. It tells you that the person you've been pretending to be isn't real. That the mask you wear to fit in is suffocating you. That you've been living on autopilot, mistaking survival for purpose. It tells you that every distraction you run to, the noise, the validation, the chaos, is just your way of avoiding yourself. That's why awareness burns. It forces you to stop hiding. And the longer you fight it, the louder it gets. You'll feel it in your chest. That pressure that builds every time you ignore what you know. It's like your soul is begging you to stop pretending. You'll find yourself staring at the ceiling at night, asking questions you don't want answers to. You'll start feeling like something's missing, even when everything looks fine. That's the moment awareness becomes unbearable. When the life you built no longer fits the person you're becoming. When the comfort starts to feel like a cage, you might think you can go back to pretending, back to being numb. But once you've tasted awareness, you can't unfeel it. You can distract yourself, bury it under noise, drown it in routine, but it waits. It waits in the silence between your distractions. It waits when the noise fades and you're left alone with your thoughts. Because awareness doesn't disappear. It lingers. It follows you until you decide to stop running. Until you decide that the pain of staying asleep is worse than the pain of waking up. You want change. You'll get it the moment awareness stops being something you can live with. When you can no longer tolerate the lies, the pretending, the endless loop of almosts. When the discomfort of knowing outweighs the comfort of ignorance. That's when you move. That's when the shift begins. Not because you planned it, but because you had no choice left. Because the truth became too loud to ignore. Because awareness, once it burns deep enough, doesn't destroy you. It demands that you start over. Life doesn't shift when you're ready. It shifts when you're honest. Everyone wants change, but on their terms. They want timing that suits them, signs that flatter them, outcomes that don't challenge them. They want to be comfortable while transforming. But life doesn't care about your schedule or your comfort. It waits for one thing: honesty. The kind that strips you bare. The kind that leaves no room for pretending. You can plan, pray, prepare, manifest. But nothing truly moves until you stop lying to yourself. You see, most people aren't stuck because life's unfair. They're stuck because they're dishonest about where they really are. They say they're fine when they're miserable. They say they've healed when they've only buried the pain. They say they've let go when they're still checking the door. That's the truth nobody likes to admit. Self-deception keeps the world spinning. People would rather fake progress than face the truth that they've gone nowhere. It's easier to play strong than to sit with what's broken. Easier to keep up appearances than to admit the mask is slipping. But life doesn't move for masks. It only responds to truth. You can lie to everyone, even to yourself for a while, but you can't lie to the current of your own soul. You can feel it when something's off. That unease in your chest, that constant tension, that voice that whispers, "This isn't it." You drown it in distractions, call it stress, blame it on others. But deep down, you know. You've always known. The problem isn't confusion, it's avoidance. Because being honest means you'd have to admit everything you've been pretending isn't working anymore. Honesty is painful because it ruins illusions. It takes away the comfort of blaming others. when you finally tell the truth to yourself. You can't go back to playing victim. You see where you allowed the wrong people to stay. You see where you ignored red flags because they were painted in your favorite color. You see where you called stagnation, loyalty, and fear patience. That's the kind of honesty that changes everything, not the surface level kind. The one that cuts deep enough to expose all the ways you've betrayed yourself just to feel safe. It's funny how people say they want clarity, yet run from the conversations that would give it to them. They want purpose, but they won't let go of the distractions keeping them numb. They want new beginnings, but they keep revisiting what ended. Life doesn't shift for that kind of contradiction. It waits for you to stop pretending. It waits for the moment when the lies become too heavy to carry. That's when it moves. That's when the shift happens. When the weight of pretending becomes heavier than the fear of truth. You'll know it's close when everything starts to fall apart. The things you used to love don't satisfy you anymore. The people you used to rely on start to drift away. The plans you made start to crumble. You'll call it chaos, but it's correction. Life's way of tearing down what's false so truth can breathe. That's the cost of honesty. Losing what was built on lies. But you can't heal inside a story that isn't real. And the longer you stay in denial, the louder the collapse becomes. Until one day, you wake up and realize the pain isn't punishment. It's exposure. It's life saying, stop pretending. Start facing it. Honesty demands destruction first. You'll lose the versions of yourself that lived to please others. You'll lose the illusions that kept you safe. You'll lose your excuses, your comfort zones, your false sense of control. But in their place comes clarity. The kind that burns, then rebuilds. The kind that forces you to stop blaming everyone else and finally take accountability. It's brutal, but freeing. Because once you're honest, you stop fighting reality. You stop trying to bend the truth to fit your narrative. You start walking in alignment instead of illusion. The shift doesn't wait for your permission. It happens the moment truth cracks through the layers of your pretending. It might come as a breakdown, a confrontation, a sleepless night, a sudden realization, but it comes. And when it does, it feels like everything's being taken from you. But what's really being removed are the lies you built your identity around. The lies that made you shrink, settle, and stay small. The ones you told yourself to survive. When they fall apart, it feels like death. But it's not. It's rebirth disguised as loss. You can't control when it happens. You can only control how long you resist it. Life's been whispering to you for a while, hasn't it? Through disappointment, through boredom, through patterns that keep repeating. You've felt it. That tension, that restlessness, that quiet knowing that something's got to change. But instead of listening, you kept saying, not yet. Not until it's convenient, not until it feels safe. But the truth doesn't care about your timing. It only cares about your honesty. And when you finally stop lying to yourself, the shift happens on its own. People think awakening comes from motivation. But it comes from exhaustion, from being too tired to keep pretending, from finally admitting that what you've built doesn't align with who you are anymore. That's where the shift begins. Not when you're ready, but when you're real. Because life doesn't reward readiness. It rewards truth. And when the truth finally hits you, when all the pretending burns away,